While the Bears had the day off, the Blackhawks rallied for 5 unanswered goals and ended their losing skid against the Ducks.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome on in to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now your number one sports podcasting network, where we bring you your team every day. I'm Jack Bushman, also Blackhawks beat writer for Chicago Hockey Now. On today's episode, I'll break down how the Blackhawks clawed their way out of an early hole and snapped their losing streak against the Ducks. I'll also get into the latest updates that we have on goaltender Laurent Brossoit. And then in segment 3, I'll dive into prospect AJ Spellacy being named as part of the United States preliminary roster for the upcoming World Junior Championship. But first, have to let you all know real quick that today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. Go and download the FanDuel app now, or you can simply check out FanDuel.com to get $300 worth of bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. All right, happy Monday, everyone, and happy first day of December as well, which I cannot believe has already arrived. And with it, of course, came the foot of snow that we got in the Chicagoland area over the weekend, which I hope that everyone safely traveled through over these last couple of days. But man, winter has come and smacked us in the face, as it always seems to do. Temperatures were up into the 50s just a couple of days ago, but of course, that is no longer the case. On the bright side, though, we got some fun stuff to talk about to open up today's show. Is how about those Blackhawks, baby? Overcoming an early 3-0 deficit and taking down the Anaheim Ducks 5-3 at the United Center to snap their 5-game losing skid. And I got a lot of fun stats for you all here on today's show, and here's one right off the jump. Coming into this contest, the Blackhawks were 0-5-2 when allowing their opponent to score first, and were also 0-3-0 when trailing after 20 minutes, which, first off, I mean, for the Blackhawks to only be down after the first period 3 times in their opening 24 games is pretty remarkable. They have gotten off to good starts, I mean, basically on a nightly basis. But on the flip side, Anaheim was 8-0-0 when scoring the opening goal of the game and 6-0-0 when leading after 20 minutes. But there are no longer zeros in all of those categories after an excellent comeback effort by the Blackhawks in the final 40 to 45 minutes. And who else but none other than Mr. Connor Bedard leading the charge. 2 more goals along with 2 assists yesterday for Bedard, a 4-point game. It's already his third 4-point showing of the season, wound up with an unreal game-winning goal in the third period, taking advantage of a turnover by the Ducks in the D zone, gets one-on-one with Ville Husso, who literally just entered the game, replacing former Blackhawks netminder Peter Mrazek, who I'm hoping all the best for. He's dealt with groin injuries for a majority of his career, hoping that's not what's plagued him once again and forced him to leave yesterday's game. But what a rude arrival for Ville Husso. Gets Connor Bedard on a one-on-one, and he absolutely dangles him out of his jockstrap to put the puck into a yawning cage for his 15th goal of the season. Had 2 unreal passes that set up the Blackhawks opening 2 goals of the game, and then, of course, went on to add the empty netter for a second goal of the afternoon, 16th of the season, and 4th point to go and seal the comeback win for the Blackhawks. And I love to see the feistiness out of Bedard as well, giving it to the Ducks bench a little bit after recording that empty netter, and he was mixing it up with Mason McTavish of the Ducks, who Bedard and McTavish, they've been teammates for Team Canada in the past. They know each other pretty well. Bedard said after the contest that they're good friends, and he was probably going to say hi to him once his media session wrapped up. But Bedard and McTavish were going at it a little bit just moments prior to Bedard hitting the empty net. And then once he scored it, he made sure to let the Ducks bench know, throwing some chirps in their direction. And even as the final horn sounded, McTavish kind of skated into the Blackhawk zone and threw a check at Bedard. They mixed it up in a skirmish. Love to see Connor Murphy and Ilya Mikheyev, two vets, immediately jump in and give Bedard some support. So kind of a funny way to end this contest. Could clearly see the Ducks were frustrated with what transpired over those final two periods. And there was also a video shared on social media that I saw on Instagram this morning. Obviously, I just referenced Bedard, his post-game comments about McTavish, saying that they're good friends, talked about them being teammates for Team Canada at the World Juniors and whatnot. But there was also a clip shared on social media of back at the 2022 World Junior Championship, McTavish and Bedard at a practice for Team Canada. McTavish kind of showing Bedard how to scrap a little bit there and just showing him how to better protect himself on the ice. And I thought it was funny that Bedard, a couple of years later, was using some of those same maneuvers to protect himself from a much bigger Mason McTavish. But I love to see Bedard rise to the moment. And when things get chippy, he's the one to seal the game. He winds up with an unreal game winner. He winds up with a 4-point afternoon. Excellent performance once again from Connor Bedard. That now puts him into a tie for second with Macklin Celebrini in the NHL in points with 37 this year, trailing only Nathan MacKinnon. Bedard is now on pace for 121 points this season, Blackhawks fans. My, oh my, the kid is blossoming right in front of our eyes. And after being held pointless in the last game against the Nashville Predators, love to see him respond with a big one here against the Ducks. And I'll get into more of those stats here in just a second in terms of Bedard's response from a pointless performance this season. But I did want to add first that Bedard became the fifth fastest player in Blackhawks franchise history to record 20 assists in a season, doing it in just 25 games. And also want to mention Bedard's career numbers against the Anaheim Ducks, because as I put on today's thumbnail, Bedard owns Anaheim in 8 career games against the Ducks. Bedard now has 3 goals, 13 assists, and 16 points, averaging 2 points per game against Anaheim. Also has 34 shots on net in those 8 contests. So for whatever reason, almost similar to how he plays against the Calgary Flames, he just has their number. But a big-time performance from Connor Bedard to pull the Blackhawks out of the depths, what looked like was going to be a very ugly loss with the way that it started. I mean, Anaheim scored twice before people were even able to sit down following the national anthem. 2 goals in the opening minute. The first one came just 15 seconds into the contest. It was a horrendous start from the Blackhawks, but to find a way to dig deep and come out with 2 points to close out November in this 4-game homestand with a victory before 4 games in a row coming up on the West Coast, all against teams that are currently in playoff position. This was a real gutsy one from number 98 and the Blackhawks. And I just mentioned a moment ago, Bedard's response this year after having a pointless game, the outing prior, has been remarkable. And I think that goes back to something I've also touched on a lot here on the show, is just the baseline and the consistency that we're seeing from Bedard. And superstars in this league, they don't often go 2 consecutive games without a point or 2 consecutive games without their best stuff. And we've seen that from Connor Bedard here in year 3. And just, again, goes to show you the high level that he's playing at nearly night in and night out. And when he does have a down game, he's bouncing back in a big time way in the next one. So after going pointless this season, Bedard has now failed to record a point in 6 of the Blackhawks' 25 contests. The first time he was held scoreless, he responded with a 3-assist game in an 8-3 beatdown over the St. Louis Blues back in October. Then, after going scoreless for the second time this season, he responded with the lone goal for the Blackhawks and a 3-1 home loss to the Los Angeles Kings. The next time he went scoreless, the following game, he potted a hat trick against the Calgary Flames, then had a 2-assist game in a loss to the Seattle Kraken. The next time he went scoreless after being held without a point, obviously the Blackhawks were shut out 2 weekends ago against the Colorado Avalanche, 1-0. And the following contest last week against the Minnesota Wild, he had 1 goal and 1 assist in that overtime loss, and then was held without a point in the 1-goal defeat to the Nashville Predators, bounces back with a 4-point outing here against Anaheim. So just going back to what I was saying, when Bedard gets held off the stat sheet, he's coming back with a chip on his shoulder the next night. And that's what most superstars do in this league. Bounce back in a very resilient way and drive play for your team. And Connor Bedard drove the comeback for the Blackhawks in this one. Made a beautiful pass to get the team on the board in the first period, finding Frankie Nazar on the power play at the left dot. Tyler Bertuzzi winds up getting a piece of his shot in front of Peter Mrazek. And then the second goal that cut the Hawks deficit to 3-2, 2-on-1 rush with Ryan Green makes a saucy no-look pass that Green's able to one-time into the back of the net, making it a one-goal game. Then I already discussed the dazzling moves that Bedard made on poor Ville Husso, who was certainly not ready for that type of situation. My oh my, Connor Bedard backpacking the Blackhawks to a big-time comeback victory, but there definitely were other reasons why the Blackhawks were able to come away with this one with 2 points despite falling behind 3-0 in the first period. I just referenced Tyler Bertuzzi and the power play goal that he scored. That really gave the Blackhawks, I think, a sense of calmness going into the first intermission a little bit when everything was kind of unraveling right in front of them in the opening 20 minutes. They got that power play tally to get on the board, cut their deficit to 2 going into the intermission, and allow them, I think, to settle down a little bit, relax, and understand, hey, we're not out of this thing. We just got to go put our best foot forward, shift by shift, get the next goal, and all of a sudden, we're only down by 1. I thought that was a really key goal by Tyler Bertuzzi before the intermission. That's now his 13th goal of the season, which trails only Bedard on the Blackhawks. That's a tough guy to, match the pace with. But Bertuzzi continues to be excellent, man. 10 goals in his last 10 games now, and 7 power play tallies on the season. I knew he was going to be a huge factor on the Blackhawks man advantage this year after having 9 power play goals last season, which was a pretty rocky 82-game campaign for Bertuzzi. I expected him to be much more consistent, but for him to already have 7 power play goals in 25 games, I mean, is absolutely awesome. And he's second in the NHL in that category, trailing only Wyatt Johnston, who of his 16 goals for the Dallas Stars this season, 12 have come on the man advantage. But Bert on the power play and that net front greasy roll, deflecting pucks, cleaning up the loose change. That's what he does so well, and he provided a big one for the Blackhawks in the final moments of the first period. Real good stuff from Tyler Bertuzzi. Also want to shout out Ryan Green. I mentioned he buried that one-timer. Nasty no-look feed from Connor Bedard on a 2-on-1. The finished product and the finishing touch had kind of eluded Green for most of November, went up on the top line with Bedard, but has kind of gotten the hang of it here over these last 2 games as he's now scored goals in each of those contests, giving him 4 on the season. And overall, in the last 8 games, Green has tallied 5 points. And I think altogether, with the way that he's meshing with Bedard in the O-zone, the way that he's working well with him in transition, and Bedard mentioned, and this is something I've definitely noticed recently too, Bedard said after the game that Ryan Green is always open. And I feel like Green's play recognition has been really sound, finding himself in those soft spots in the zone, in the slot, or putting himself in a good position in transition to get pucks off on the net. He's had a ton of dangerous scoring opportunities over the last, handful of weeks, but now is starting to finally see the puck go in, and that does a lot for a young player's confidence. So I continue to be really impressed with Ryan Green, and as someone who I really thought was, and I still do think long-term he's going to be a 3rd or 4th line center, I knew what he was capable of offensively from his 3 years at Boston University, putting up 30 points in every season there, but I did not think he would handle playing alongside Connor Bedard and not being a hindrance to that top line as well as he has here in his rookie season. So really good stuff from Ryan Green. And I think even though Burakovsky's back, Bertuzzi's back, Dickinson's back, I think Ryan Green does, for the time being, deserve to remain on that top line along with Bedard and Burakovsky because of how well that he's played. Another good game from number 20 in black for the Blackhawks as they rock the black alternates for the 2nd consecutive game. Also, want to give a shout out to the doctor, Colton Dock, calling him up, and the doctor comes in clutch in the second period to tie the game 3-3. Just his 3rd goal of the season, snapped a 6-game goal drought for Doc, but he showed off that booming shot that he possesses. We don't get to see it too frequently, but it's something I've talked about a few times on the show, more so when Doc was still playing junior or in his first year with the Rockford Ice Hogs, and I was kind of talking about his future role with the Blackhawks and his best offensive attributes. Well, he doesn't have, much speed, doesn't really have much playmaking whatsoever. He does have a really good shot, and when he was in junior, a really good goal scorer that could score from all angles. And we saw that a couple of different times during his time in the AHL with the Ice Hogs too. And I feel like this was the first real time in the NHL that we've seen what a shot Colton Dach possesses. And the puck absolutely jumped off of his stick, off of that feed from Teravainen, which even Doc said after the game he wasn't too sure if that was an intentional pass from Tavo, but once he settled it down, took no time to go and blast that shot over Peter Mrazek's glove. Clutch time for Doc to pick up his third goal of the season. First career power play tally, by the way, for number 34. Also added 2 hits in this game. Remains third in the NHL in that category and leading all rookies with 94 hits on the season. Good stuff from Colton Dach. And speaking of the Blackhawks power play, the man advantage was crucial in terms of them coming back from down 3-0. Bertuzzi's goal to get them on the board late in the first period, I mentioned that was on the power play. Same thing here with Colton Dach. And this was just the second time this season that the Blackhawks have recorded multiple power play goals in a single game. The last time was when they went 3 for 3 in Calgary, when Bedard also had a 4-point performance. But huge time for the power play to come up in a big spot and help the Blackhawks, kind of chip away at that early deficit. 2 power play goals in a game for just the second time this season. And last but certainly not least, what I really like from the Blackhawks in the third period, not only that they maintained the momentum that they generated from in the second, but I also thought that once they grabbed the lead, they really didn't make Spencer Knight have to work all that hard down the stretch. And as opposed to, the third period against the Seattle Kraken, where everything went sideways once they got the lead, how they played against the Minnesota Wild in the third period, right? Even though the final frame has been a strong spot for the Blackhawks this season, I still believe they have the most goals scored of any team in the third period this year. It hasn't been too kind to them during this losing skid, but for them to not only go and grab the lead, but to hold on to it and not force Spencer Knight to kind of bail them out in the final moments, I thought was really impressive. So obviously Connor Bedard, he's going to get all the attention. His third 4-point game of the season now, tied for second in the NHL in points as we're over the quarter mark of the campaign, but it truly was a full team effort that led the Blackhawks down from 3-0 and scoring 5 unanswered goals to go and put an end to their 5-game losing streak at the United Center. Huge 2 points to close out the month of November and their 4-game homestand. Hopefully they can take some of these good vibes with them to kick off a 4-game road trip out west, which is going to be a real tester against some real quality teams. But there are, I guess I should say, my takeaways from the Blackhawks. 5-3, much needed comeback win over the Anaheim Ducks. Coming up in just a moment here, I'll dive into the latest updates that we got on goaltender Laurent Brossoit. But first, I got to talk to you all about a new sponsor here on the show, which is Drip Drop. When I'm hydrated, everything just works better. My focus, my energy, my mood, and even my skin. And that's why I've been using Drip Drop. It's doctor-developed hydration that keeps me running at full power no matter what my day looks like. It delivers 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading brands using a science-backed formula trusted by medical professionals, firefighters, and over 90% of top college and pro teams. Hydration has now become non-negotiable for me, and Drip Drop helps me feel sharper, calmer, and honestly, just better overall. And right now, Drip Drop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. All you got to do is go to dripdrop.com and then use our promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps. Again, that's dripdrop.com with the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps for $20 off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard and keep your body and mind performing at their best with Drip Drop. As always, just a quick reminder to please go smash that like button, subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube if you haven't done so already or enjoying what I'm doing here today or what I produce here on a weekly basis or on a daily basis, I should say. And if you're tuning in through an audio platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, it's also 100% free for you to rate and review the show and helps me out in a real big way in growing my platform. Segment 2. Blackhawks goaltender Laurent Brossoit, who I mentioned recently on the show, has resumed skating for the first time as a member of the Hawks after signing a 2-year deal with the team back in the summer of 2024. Well, Brossoit now finds himself in the middle of some trade discussions currently, as over the weekend, Elliot Friedman on Sportsnet Saturday Headlines said that Brossoit broke some news, saying that Brossoit is planning to play this week on a conditioning stint with the Rockford Ice Hogs in the AHL. And the Blackhawks have also given other NHL clubs permission to start talking to Brossoit so they can, discuss his current situation, the surgeries, the timeline of when he's going to be, fully 100% ready for game action and all that stuff and everything in between. But a major update here on Laurent Brossoit. First off, I figured we wouldn't be seeing Brossoit on that conditioning stint until right around Christmas, which I said on the show just a few days ago, just kind of by how long he's been away from game action for and the fact that he's just now, I want to say it was Wednesday or Thursday, he participated in a drill for the first time as a member of the Blackhawks. So I honestly didn't think the conditioning stint was going to come as soon as this week, which that's what Elliot Friedman is reporting on Sportsnet. We'll see if Brossoit officially gets sent down to the AHL, but I just figured that wasn't going to be happening for another couple of weeks. So that was a little bit surprising to me. But the part that wasn't surprising whatsoever was Friedman saying that the Blackhawks have opened up Brossoit for a trade. As I talked about on the show, there just isn't any room for Brossoit right now in the Blackhawks organization. When they signed him in the summer of 2024, that was before they had acquired Spencer Knight. Arvid Soderblom was also on an expiring contract at that point. We weren't as convinced long-term about Drew Commesso, and the Hawks really needed someone to kind of step in and be a placeholder in a similar way to what Peter Mrazek did for the team these last couple of years. Well, obviously, Brossoit hasn't been healthy at all during his time with the Blackhawks, as he was injured in the 2024 Stanley Cup playoffs with the Vegas Golden Knights, then had to go and have meniscus surgery, then a follow-up procedure on his right knee, and then had hip surgery here this offseason. But at the time, the Blackhawks obviously could have used him. Well, now they have Spencer Knight. He's locked into the number one goalie role of the future. Arvid Soderblom, of course, signed a 2-year extension with Chicago this past offseason. And even though he's kind of had some hiccups in his last 2 outings, still is locked into being the NHL backup. And even talking down in the AHL, you don't want to be taking away starts consistently from Drew Commesso and Stanislav Berezhnoi. So there's no real clear spot for Laurent Brossoit. And even, when he is healthy, he's not an AHL caliber goaltender. He's an NHLer. And when he was right, and, it's kind of been the knock on his career, when he is healthy, it hasn't happened all that frequently, but he's been one of the better, 1B, 2A goalies in the entire league. So I'm sure someone is going to be willing to give him a shot, even though it's been a couple of years from him since he last played in game action. But there's just no spot for him right now with the Blackhawks. So no surprise whatsoever that whenever Brossoit is going to go on that conditioning stint and becomes fully healthy, the Blackhawks are expected to trade him. And all eyes immediately go to Stan Bowman and the Edmonton Oilers, because we know about the, goaltender deficiencies that they've been dealing with for far too long. Probably starting to have Connor McDavid losing his hair there up in Edmonton after signing that contract extension to remain with the club this summer. The goaltending that they've gotten this year has been very underwhelming once again. So the natural link to Laurent Brossoit comes from the Edmonton Oilers. And I think it's a pretty clear-cut fit, right? I know there are some other teams. The Buffalo Sabres have one too many goalies. There's some rumors going on right now involving Jordan Binnington and the St. Louis Blues. So Laurent Brossoit isn't the Oilers or maybe anyone else who's interested in adding a goaltender right now. Brossoit isn't their only option. There are some others out there that they could pursue. However, I do feel Laurent Brossoit in the final year of his current deal, $3.3 million cap hit, which is pretty minimal right here, right now. Most teams, I think, would be able to find a way to squeeze that in. The Oilers, I believe they would be able to. So, yeah, naturally, all the focus shifts towards Edmonton. Once Laurent Brossoit is officially good to go, I would say there's a 95% chance that Brossoit winds up getting traded by the Blackhawks. Well, maybe he could provide a little bit of help in give the Blackhawks maybe some more stable goaltending consistently when they don't have Spencer Knight in there. They still made the commitment to Arvid Soderblom in the offseason, regardless of how me or you feel about him. And because he's on that 2-year deal, he's locked in with this team in that backup spot. So I don't think the Hawks, even though they could, just based on how they like to go about their roster construction with only playing 11 forwards consistently, they could, if they wanted to, have 3 goaltenders on the roster, but I don't feel like that's just going to benefit any of them. So the right move and the likely outcome out of all of this is Laurent Brossoit is going to get traded by the Blackhawks, and odds are it's going to be happening with him getting sent to the Edmonton Oilers. But there's the latest that we have on Laurent Brossoit, as he's now started to resume skating and seems to be catching the attention of some other clubs around the NHL right now because of their own goaltending issues. We'll see what winds up happening with that situation. Like I said, though, I expect Brossoit to get dealt in. If/when that time comes, I'll be covering it right here on Locked On Blackhawks. Coming up in just a moment, before I close out today's episode, do want to get into a quick chat on top prospect AJ Spellacy. But first, I got to talk to you all about another one of today's sponsors, which is FanDuel. The NBA season, is here, and the Chicago Bulls, kind of like the Blackhawks, got off to a roaring start, haven't been as consistent over these last couple of weeks, but regardless, there's no better place to get in on the action with the Bulls or with the NBA than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And even if you miss the start of a game or just want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything, from who will score next to the fourth quarter comebacks. And you can also wager on Matas Buzelis, Kobe White, and more key members of the Bulls. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a much bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late fourth quarter push. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So go and head on over to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel Sportsbook app to sign up and play your game now with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Segment 3, now that we are in December, that means the World Junior Championship is just over 3 weeks away, and the rosters are going to start being unveiled for each country. And actually, just here about an hour ago, at the time of this recording, the United States announced its preliminary roster for the tournament, which, by the way, officially starts the day after Christmas, Friday, December 26th this year. The tournament is going to be held in St. Paul, Minnesota. The USA get home ice advantage as they try to make it 3 gold medals in a row at the WJC and pick up their 4th over the last 6 years. But being announced as part of the United States preliminary roster here today was none other than Blackhawks 2024 third-round pick AJ Spellacy. And I remember this time last year going through the World Juniors rosters and all the Blackhawks prospects that were named to those teams. AJ Spellacy made the preliminary roster for USA, but was unfortunately among the final cuts. Didn't wind up suiting up for the red, white, and blue in the tournament. But I remember saying after he was cut last year, which was the likely outcome because of his age, just because of how deep the United States roster was, it was going to be a very outside chance for Spellacy to crack that squad. However, I said at that time this time last year, I guess I should say, that Spellacy is going to come back with a vengeance, and being one of the older players in contention has a real good chance of making the club right here, right now, and he's going to get his opportunity to do that over these next couple of weeks. Officially one of the forwards named on this preliminary roster. Wanted to go through Daily Faceoff's projected lineup right here, right now for the red, white, and blue in a couple of weeks' time. Teddy Stiga, James Higgins, and Brody Zemer. No surprise there. Projected to be the top line for the United States, all part of the preliminary roster announcement today. Then on the second line, Cole Yzerman and Camille Bednarik, 2 teammates along with Blackhawks prospect Sasha Boisvert at Boston University. On the second line, along with Trevor Connolly, former first-round pick of the Vegas Golden Knights. Then on the third line, it's Riker Lee, Will Horkoff, and Max Plant. And then on the fourth line, according to Daily Faceoff, is Shane Vinsai, Cole McKinney, and AJ Spellacy. So Daily Faceoff think Spellacy has a really good crack of making this final roster. I did go through Elite Prospects projected roster today as well. They did not have Spellacy on the final roster. So it looks like, Spellacy is going to have to make a strong showing in order to make this team. However, I do feel like on a team that, yeah, they got some good size and good two-way players with guys like Will Horkoff, who's having a monster year in college hockey, Cole McKinney. They have responsible defensive-minded players, but I do feel like the size, the speed, and the physicality and just the pure athleticism that AJ Spellacy brings to the table, I think that makes him a very intriguing option to make this final team. So I would say if I had to guess right here, right now, I'd go 75% chance that Spellacy does make this team, 25% chance that he doesn't. And it will be very interesting to see what winds up developing in terms of the final roster over these next couple of weeks before the action officially begins in St. Paul, Minnesota. Always one of my favorite times of the year. I know a lot of Blackhawks fans feel the same way about the World Junior Championship. Hopefully, we'll be seeing AJ Spellacy suit up for the red, white, and blue. As a reminder, some other Blackhawks prospects who are likely going to be taking part in this tournament or are on the cusp of making their respective countries' rosters. Anton Frondell, he's going to be there for Team Sweden. We know that. I believe Václav Nestrasil is going to be part of Team Czechia. Their roster announcement I saw is set for Wednesday, December 3rd of this week. Believe Nestrasil is going to be playing for Czechia. And then for Team Canada, Sasha Boisvert and Marek Vanacker both are going to be fighting for a spot on those rosters. I really thought Boisvert was going to be a slam dunk for the Canadians in this tournament, but unfortunately, he's been hampered by injuries in his first year with BU and just hasn't been the sophomore season that I thought we were going to see out of Sasha. That, unfortunately, might keep him off the Canadians roster. Marek Vanacker, actually, between the two, sounds like he has the better chance to wind up playing for Team Canada, the power forward style that he can bring to the table, and also the fact that he's got 23 goals in 23 games in the OHL for the Brantford Bulldogs. Yeah, that'll get you on Team Canada's radar. Hoping we'll get at least one of those two Blackhawks prospects for Team Canada and maybe have 4 or 5 Blackhawks prospects playing in this year's World Junior Championship. But that's going to take care of the update on AJ Spellacy, and we'll also take care of today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Follow Locked On Blackhawks for free as well, wherever you may be listening to your podcast. That way you don't miss out on any of the latest episodes as soon as they become available. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can follow me on X at Jack Bushman2, but my Strictly Blackhawks account is at Talkin' Hockey. Go and give that a follow so you don't miss any of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Until tomorrow's episode, everyone, enjoy the rest of your Mondays. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.